Would love to introduce yourself. But before I do that, I just want to give a quick intro to what we're doing here. My name is B. Dougie. More than likely, you're probably following me on Twitter already. That's probably how you heard of this. Or you're following Ian. Good chances you're also following Ian. But I am maintainer of a project called Open Source, a project to find your next open source contribution. And I think that open source has got like very interesting like on ramps into how people contribute. And I've been reaching out to folks who maintain projects to have conversations about how maintenance works. How do you like grow community? How do you find insights of what's happening? So like we can cover all that, but for first, Ian, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, by the way. Yeah, so my name's Ian Sutherland. I'm a software developer. I've been doing that for many years now. Too many. I don't want to say how many. Um, I currently I'm working at a Canadian fintech startup called Neo Financial. And then in addition to that, I'm one of the maintainers of Create React app. And then I'm also a member of the Node.js team, where I mostly work on the tooling working group. So trying to make Node as awesome as possible for building like CLI tools and things like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I forgot about that at group two as well because I think you had told me about this last summer when I had you on the Open Source Friday stream. Can you talk more about the node tooling and how that's sort of organized?
Yeah, for sure. So Node is an interesting project. It Create React App and Node are basically like they're both large projects, but they are basically the exact opposite of each other. Um, Create React App is like myself and a couple other people just trying to do what we can in our free time. Whereas Node is like a massive project. It's a part of the OpenJS Foundation. There's huge companies backing it, like Google and Microsoft and IBM. There's people that are paid full time to work on Node.js. So yeah, very different projects. And yeah, one of the things that the Node.js project does, they have a number of different like working groups.
Yeah.
So that's just groups of people that focus on different areas of sort of the project. As an example, we've got working groups around like even just building like the binaries for the project, and then there's also a technical steering committee that kind of oversees like the technical direction of the project. And then the group that I work on, we're actually an unofficial working group called the Tooling Group. And some of the stuff we've done actually over the last few years is we've added a bunch of recursive stuff to the Node file system. So like copying directories, deleting directories, things like that you used to have to pull in an external package just to do. And then at the moment, we're actually working on an argument parser, a built-in argument parser for Node.js. So if you're building like a simple CLI or something, instead of having to pull in yargs or commander or something,
Yeah.
that's soon going to be just built right in. So
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's so every the stuff's the node tooling group is when like TC39 they go and they approve the next spec. Is the tooling like the node tooling group? Are they the folks who are building some of these? What do you call it, polyfills as well? Like, I don't know if it's your job, but like, are you jumping in to do that kind of stuff too as well?
that hasn't really been the case. It's more us kind of driving the direct, like for example, the file system API. I
Yeah.
guess there is like a web file system API now, and at some point we might build like compatibility with that in Node.js. There's actually an FS group that would probably do that. So yeah, it's more us driving like what are things that we want to see, because most of the people in the group are authors of CLI tools. Like I got involved with it through Create React App, and we've got other people from NPM. The maintainer of Yargs, for example, is one of the members, and so it's sort of more us driving the work as people who build tools and just kind of thinking like, what are the limitations or shortcomings that we encounter regularly, and how can we take some of those away and build some of that stuff into Node.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we spent a lot of time talking about Node, but I'm curious about Create React App. So how'd you get involved in Create React App?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So it started. I mean, I started just using the project when it kind of first came out, um, and it really started with just doing some really small contributions like bug fixes, probably even some documentation fixes and stuff like that, and then just kind of from being around a project, you kind of start to get a little bit more of a sense of what other sort of maybe larger initiatives are kind of happening. And so I knew at that point we were working towards V2 of Create React App. And so I wanted to kind of get involved in that. And there was sort of a particular task that I'm not sure how I kind of like ended up with, but it was basically this idea that you can like import an SVG file as a React component, like without doing any packages or any, and so I started working on that, and that I think I actually ended up implementing like 2 or 3 or more different solutions to that, and that kind of spurred a bunch of conversations with the other maintainers like Dan Abramov, and Joe Timer, who works at Vercel right now. They were kind of the 2 main ones at the time. So that kind of got me talking with them. And then I think at one point, the approach we were taking was with Babel macros, which then got like Kelsey Dodds involved in the conversation and some of the Babel people, and kind of turned into a whole big thing. But then eventually we kind of settled on an implementation for that problem and got it merged. And then I got a message from Dan Abramov after that, and he was just like, "Hey, do you want to be a maintainer of the project?" And I said yes for some reason. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
How long ago was that?
That was like 4 years ago, I think.
Okay, so you just been in the mix ever since? Because I want to say that if I look at the contribution graph, like you're up there. Like you've probably been like the sort of. I guess what does it look like?
Yeah.
Are you the main contributor of the project at this point?
I would say I'm not really. I don't actually contribute that much code anymore. It's
Okay.
It's kind of like, in some ways, being the maintainer of an open source project is like being a engineering manager. Like my job, or like a team lead or something. My job is a lot more. Oh yeah, there I am, number 3. All right.
Yeah. Well, in the last year, you're number 1.
All right. Yeah, and everyone at the top 4 people there are kind of our main contributors or maintainers at this point. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot like kind of being like a team lead or an engineering manager. Like I do a lot more like wrangling of issues and PRs and coordinating what goes into the next release and doing the releases and stuff like that, as opposed to contributing code, which I honestly kind of prefer the contributing code part, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah. It's So I've had conversations with folks like Henry. I just talked to Faraz actually a couple weeks ago. We just shipped that on the YouTube channel yesterday, and really quickly, like what happens is most maintainers, even folks who like yourself, you didn't create React App, which is you didn't create React App basically, but you became a maintainer and like core contributor. But very quickly, what usually happens is like you have to put yourself in a place of replacing yourself or scaling, because at the end of the day, like no one wants to. Well, some people actually enjoy being the solo maintainer and things, and like sometimes that can be sustainable. But at a level like how many downloads are we talking when we talk about Create React App? Or I guess if I could check use by.
The use by is like 6.4 million. All right.
Yes. That's just a small drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the question is like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the question is like, how did you sort of scale yourself off the project? Like, how do you entice other folks to come contribute with you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I kind of look at look at what happened when I joined the project a little bit differently now, because at the time I was like, oh wow, I got a message from Dan Abramov, he wants me to be part of the project. But then now I kind of realize that it's like it is sort of that cycle where he's like, I need someone else to help, like, take this over. And not too long after I joined, like Dan hasn't been as involved in the project since that like V2 release.
Yeah, he's
so it's
slightly
just
busy.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just myself and Joe, kind of as the main maintainers for, I don't know, maybe a year or something, and then yeah, Joe ended up going to work at Vercel, and so then all of a sudden I found myself as kind of, the one running the show, and then yeah, so I kind of find myself doing the same thing that Dan did. When someone shows some interest in the project, or like puts up a couple PRs, and you kind of get a sense like, okay, this person seems kind of like interested in the project, and like they've done some good work. Then I'll like immediately like try and reach out to them and be like, hey, do you want to join the project?
Yeah, and how successful is that for like enticing people to like you've obviously tried it a couple times. Like,
Yeah.
how do you sort of onboard new folks, like similar to how Dan onboarded you?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always work. People aren't always interested in contributing more, but often they are. And a lot of the times they'll be kind of interested in working on a certain feature or a feature area. And so what ends up happening a lot is they'll kind of join the project, join the team, and maybe for a few months be really active and help us ship like a major new feature, or a major new upgrade, like like a Webpack upgrade or something like that. And then a lot of times those people, they kind of drop off after that, which honestly is fine. It's harder to find people that want to, like, once they're done with the part that they're kind of interested in, to stick around and get involved in a little bit more of the like admin kind of part of the project, like reviewing other people's PRs and helping with releases and stuff.
Yeah, I find that, like, and sometimes I think that's okay too as well. Like, if you have something that you want to get accomplished, like to help out and unblock that for the project as a whole, because like Create React App is 6 million people are using this, or projects are using this, so you're gonna get a lot of folks who are drive by, like, come through and make a contribution.
Yep.
But then there's also, like, there are folks, and I guess I'd love to pick your brain on this, because like there are tons of folks who follow me on Twitter who are like want to get involved in open source and want to find like how to make their next contribution. But like I think the chasm between somebody who wants to get involved and somebody who can get involved, like perhaps it's imposter syndrome, or perhaps it's just maybe what you were talking about. You kind of hang around the project long enough, and the stuff sort of just falls in your lap. Like,
Right.
I guess my question to you is like, I just want to like figure out what's the secret sauce to get someone to stick around and just hang out without needing the right code.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question. I'm not I'm not really sure what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
I can say, like, to your maybe one way to kind of get there, like, to the other part of your question, just about how people can kind of get involved. I do think, yeah, kind of like I talked a little bit about my story, and I think that is a good way for people to get involved in projects. Like, find something that you use first of all, and then yeah, you can start really small. Like, make even if it's just like I had a problem when I was running through this part of the like setup guide or something, and contribute a change there, or find a bug, like little bug fixes. And start there, and people start to notice if you're around and you've made a few contributions, or like respond to people in issues. Maybe people are having some similar struggles that you had. Respond in the issues and try and help them. Look at PRs that other people are submitting, and like help review those. Those are all ways that those are definitely things that get noticed by other maintainers. And then yeah, you'll start to get a better sense of like what's happening in the project and where you could maybe contribute, because there's a lot of things that are usually going on in a project that aren't, there isn't an issue that's like, oh, we want to do X. The maintainers sometimes kind of have their own ideas or a list of things that they maybe want to accomplish. And you kind of start to get a little bit familiar with that. And then that can be a good way to they'll kind of feed you like larger things, you know?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, as for how you get those people to stick around, I mean, that is a good question. I really don't know the answer to that. I'm trying to think of any like common attributes of the people that have over the years on Create React App, but I'm kind of coming up empty.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, and I think it's just like a lot of times open source it is about. Yeah, I mean, I have an entire project called Open Sauce because it's about the secret sauce or getting lost in the sauce, and which is it's a trying to force that pun, but I guess what I'm getting at is like it is around just like being available because like I do DevRel, and one of the things I tell my team all the time is that it's all about being in the right place at the right time all the time. And the only way you can do that is by like hanging out in spaces like this, which some of my team members are in the space right now, and like you don't know who's out there or what's happening. And like the best thing, like if you're in a space where you want to be involved, like Discord's a great place, GitHub issues are a great place, GitHub discussions is probably a better place. But even a better place is probably all the blog posts and documentation that gets out of date after multiple versions have been shipped. Like that's even a better place to hang out because I did a Twitter thread because I found out Twitter threads are what you're supposed to do if you want to grow engagement on Twitter. So I did a very small thread about how to make your first contribution to open source, and what my pitch was go into a project and then look for the getting started guide in their README, and if it's not linked in the README, open up an issue and mention like someone who's contributing in the maintainer or community and say, hey, there's no getting started guide for this project. And like this probably works better for smaller projects, not for like a Create React app because it's probably already solved problem. But things do change, and if you can't get started after you find the GitHub repo or the npm package, that's a really good first contribution. And then from there, go get started. And if you can't get started just by the instructions, then make a contribution. And then once you get to getting started, think about like what are the examples that you want to build with this thing, and you build it examples and you link them back in the README with permission from the maintainer or the documentation or whatever. And that's my practical advice because that's what I did a ton of at my last job. Is just go use new front end frameworks, try to use it, and if I couldn't, like have a conversation with someone who was smarter than me or someone who built it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. I definitely think, even when it comes to Create React App, I'm sure there are some areas in our documentation that have gotten out of date. And, if you were trying to run through those steps, you might run into some issues. And so we would, I would love any kind of contributions like that for sure. Or if you find bugs, those are all great ways to get started. And a lot of projects have kind of like a good first issue kind of label. I know we do, although I don't think, haven't tagged any issues with it lately. I should maybe go do that. But yeah, that's usually a great way.
What's your thought on, oh, and I just want to mention anybody who's listening, like if you have a question, feel free to request. Like we've gone halfway through, and would love to answer any questions. We've got Ian Sutherland here from the Create React app and from other various projects like the Node tooling group. But I wanted to get your input, your thought on good first issues. Like, what is a good first issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot the things that we've kind of been talking about. Documentation fixes, small bugs, things that are kind of nicely isolated, where it's like, okay, you don't have to have a deep understanding of the entire project, or fixing this bug isn't going to require, making changes through multiple files and layers of this application, like things where it's, just a fairly simple isolated bug that someone, part of the first work they're going to have to do is just cloning the project and getting it running locally, read through your contributing guide, that kind of thing. And then ideally that's like most of the work, right? And then fixing the bug is just something small that they can do. Another good way to do like first issues, something I know that like Node does, is sometimes they'll have a good first issue project, and then there's another label which is mentorship available, and that kind of means if you want to pick that bug up or that issue, someone's already agreed to kind of work with you and kind of walk you through the contribution process, which I think is, if you have the resources, I think is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I honestly I've never seen mentorship available, but I think that should be like a better, like a more broadly used thing. Maybe mentorship available is like maybe that's too many letters. That it's got to be like first timers only is like something that Kinsey Dodds
Hmm.
had created along with like promotion from Scott Hanselman like years ago. There's a whole article about this, and that was like super helpful because first timers only is like, oh yeah, cool. This is like the things for first timers. It would be great to probably revive that because I think that it's just an aggregate of that label. I built this thing called open source ketchup, and if anybody installs that GitHub app onto their project, what it does it actually sends all good first issues and PR reviews to a Discord channel inside the open source Discord, and the only projects that are using it open source projects at the moment, but it's like a great like a great way for folks who are just hanging out and like as we started this conversation, like just hanging out in the space, and eventually stuff will fall in your lap. Like what I want to do is like make the open source Discord be the place of where people hang out to sort of like wait for their turn or wait for stuff to contribute. And I think the one thing that we haven't really touched on is like, or we kind of mentioned this earlier. You mentioned it, like the more you sort of hang around, like the more you know like the names and like the process and
Hmm.
like the problems and the roadmap. But a lot of times, what's challenging is like folks will come through like maybe one weekend and decide to do open source, figure out they can't do it because they didn't get enough knowledge, and then like bow out of the entire system.
Right. Yeah, that's I mean, definitely happens. I think that's where, yeah, somewhere where like those good first issues, or if you can find someone who's willing to kind of help you through the process. And I would say a lot of projects are, even if you take on an issue and just if you kind of follow up and say like, hey, I tried fixing this, and this is where I got stuck. Probably someone will jump in and try and get you unstuck.
Yeah.
So, in many situations, sometimes there is a time when you just have to, kind of give up and walk away. It's not, maybe you pick the wrong project. Probably don't try to contribute to Node.js as an example for your first project. I actually tried like a number of times to contribute to Node and was like unsuccessful before I finally did get my first contribution in there, because it's a very complicated project and very difficult to just to work on. So maybe you just picked the wrong project, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Just give it another try. Again, look for those good first issues. Maybe look at some smaller projects where you maybe can get a little bit more time with the maintainer or something. And yeah, just try again.
Yeah, and I would say smaller projects are a great place to learn. So, like the one thing I used to mentor boot camp students, and a lot of times when you go through a boot camp, like you don't learn the best practices of how to open up a PR or how to fork, or what do you do
Mhm.
after your PR has been merged. A lot of folks like they delete the entire repo, and then like refork it, and then
Mhm.
create and a lot of times they don't create new branches. So like a lot of the best practice, like what I've tried to do with open source is I try to put the best practices in place, at least for our small project, so that way anybody can elevate, or sorry, could graduate to a larger project. And I think it does, like if you're making your first time only contribution, like perhaps Create React app might not be the best place to start because there's a lot of moving parts, but perhaps like a smaller like React that embeds video, or something like a smaller project that's maintained by one person is
Mhm.
a more opt place to start off with.
It definitely can be. I would say, make sure it's an active project. That is one thing
Yeah.
with sort of single person maintained projects, is that they may have kind of solved their need and then moved on. So just that's something to be aware of. But yeah, in general, I agree with you.
Yeah, I so I'll probably DM you later. I'm working on a little tool to basically find out activity on projects in
Hmm.
insights, and we want to actually like if I find a project that I potentially want to contribute to, I want to know really quickly like is this something I can contribute to, or are they taking
Hmm.
contribution? because like those two answers will help me onboard into open source. So like
Right.
we just shipped an update to hotopensauce.pizza, which is the actual URL, and that's like it's really defined where other folks who are in the open source community where they're contributing to and what they're basically into. Um, the update basically broke everything yesterday. We're actually working on a new rewrite of the API into Nest.js. So just keep in mind, if you look at it today, it's not going to be very useful. It will be useful in like a couple weeks. It will be useful faster if you want to jump in the Discord and answer some questions about rebuilding an API on top of Superbase. But yeah, open source for the win.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll definitely check that out. And yeah, possibly interested in getting, Create React app hooked up to that maybe. And I should, like I said, I've been a bit neglectful of the good first issue label. So maybe it'll give me some incentive to go tag some issues.
Yeah. What if there is like I want to ask you a question because like your bandwidth is probably much tighter now and like you're less involved in the project day to day. But like, what if there was like an opportunity for onboarding like like do you have a triage team or release review or anything like that?
The triage team is kind of just for Create React app is just kind of the maintainers.
Yeah. What if there was like, would it be too much of a lift if someone who knows React and knows JavaScript well, if they only just triage issues? Like, would that be too much of a blocker for someone?
I don't think so. I think the right person could definitely do that, and that's something that would be hugely beneficial, honestly.
Yeah, because like what I do, I maintain a project called Git Ignore, which is under the GitHub organization, and like most of those ignore files, I have no context of what any of those
Right.
are. They're always like brand new ML learning or like weird AI systems or languages. But what's fun about that is like I just do like usually on Fridays I'll just go through like 10 PRs of people adding or updating them and just go learn about a new language or framework or something brand new because like the majority of the changes are coming from new stuff. And it I think with like a create React app is probably a good use case for this, but like any project could probably assuming that the triager has a bit of context around just the framework or the language, and they've gone through the steps of like, I've gone through the getting started, I built something with this, I've got context where I can provide in this review. Um, I think there is an on ramp to contributors, and like I have worked in the past with this organization called All In Open Source, which is maintained by Social Impact at GitHub. And what we did is we got 25 HBCU students to go through a program for the entire school year. So they're all CE or CS students. And we taught them how to interact with GitHub, how to basically contribute to open source through maintainers actually doing guest speaking. And they just graduated the program last month. And now they're interning at GitHub for the summer to get real life programming experience. And then like we rinse and repeat, do the process again. So when they graduate, you have like legit open source contributors or even maintainers by the time they graduate college. And I think what I'm really excited about this is like these are like our future triagers. Like these are the folks who like they don't mind sitting all day every day like while listening to a lecture at school like triaging issues. Hopefully they get their work done, but like they could triage issues at school. And I think some of the things that I always consider about it, like even on my current team, is how do I replace myself? How do I elevate people and grow people to a place where they're constantly growing? Because like I don't think maybe you think differently, but you probably won't maintain Create React app forever. So just like Dan handed the keys to you, like there will probably be some keys moved on, or we archived the project, or whatever the future is. But
Right.
there needs to be like an evolution in open source or whatever. Yeah, I guess evolution is a good term.
Well, and I think that's why it's really important to you do have to constantly be looking for those people, looking for the people that are helping in issues, and trying to bring them in, because you do it. And like I said before, sometimes people come, they stay for a while, they move on, and so you do kind of have to constantly keep trying to bring new people into the project. That sounds like a really cool program, by the way. If you're ever looking for speakers, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah. I would just I'll intro you to Rizal, who's sitting here in the chat, who can intro you to that team. But yeah, I wish there was more I know there's Outreachy. There's also tons of other programs, but they're all small. But and also I think a lot of the programs outside of all in open source, because we leverage maintainers to help support, a lot of like the open source content and like curriculum tends to be like very, how do I explain this? It's like too constrained or like hands off. Like it's definitely written by people who aren't contributing to open source regularly. Like I guess that's
Right.
how I would summarize it. Because like if someone tells me again, hey, if you want to get involved in open source, go look at a package.json. I'm going to rm-rf that conversation because I feel like that's not doing justice to what open source actually is a part of. Like what it can actually be. Like you should definitely sit in the chats, sit in the community, like learn first and like grow and grow the confidence to like get involved before you even look at a package.json. And you should definitely build something with the project before you start trying the
Yeah,
triage stuff.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that is kind of a great sort of on ramp into projects, especially, yeah, maybe if you're kind of new to coding or less comfortable on the code side of contributions, helping triage issues, helping answer people's questions and get them unstuck in issues. And then, maybe move into some documentation improvements and then maybe onto some small bug fixing and stuff. It's a really good way, I think, to kind of ramp up your involvement in a project without just diving straight into the coding part.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm curious that we've gone the whole time. I don't think anybody's actually requested to ask questions or anything like that, but people are listening. So if everybody has any questions, definitely request now. But I did want to sort of wind down the conversation with you and ask, like, what are you working on today? Or even what open source is exciting to you today? Like, what do you, if you were to become a contributor, sort of first time, good first issue grabber, like, what would be the thing that you'd be interested in?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Well, I guess so. I'm actually going on Monday to Remix Conf.
Oh,
And
nice.
so yeah, for those that don't know, Remix is kind of an exciting new React framework. And it's a pretty new project, so I would say there's lots of room for it to grow, and so probably lots of contribution opportunities around that. So that's something that I'm kind of excited in at the moment. I'm rebuilding my website in Remix, and yeah, I'll be at the conference next week, and so yeah, that's an exciting new project that comes to mind.
Awesome. Yeah, I've yet to build anything in Remix, and I am not going to be attending Remix Con. I was really on the fence on it because I want to go, but I'm also like getting ready to do vacation starting the Monday after next. So I've got so much
Right.
to do before I go out. I will be at Render ATL, and I'll be talking
I,
specifically about open source.
I really wanted to go to that one this year, but I'm doing Remix next week, then I'm home for a week, and then I'm going to OpenJS World. And so
Yeah.
if I did Render, that would be 3 weeks in a row of just traveling to conferences, which did sound kind of appealing. But I do also have a day job at a startup, so
Yeah. OpenJS World, is that in Austin?
it is. Yeah, this year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll be in Austin. I might actually grab tickets for that.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
actually curious the actual dates. Yeah, I'll be in Austin like the 10th.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
showing dates, but
It's
June.
7th,
Oh,
8th,
I'll
and
be there
then
right after. Yeah.
the collaborators summit. So every time there's a node conference, they do 2 days of conference, and then 2 days following that is the collaborator summit. Since most of or a bunch of the contributors from the project are in one place at the same time,
Yeah.
we do a couple days of like sessions and meetings of the various like working groups and stuff. So that's happening on the 9th and the 10th.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll be there if y'all are doing any sort of drinks or dinner. Hit me up. I'll be there the 10th.
Absolutely.
I did attend last year and the year before remotely. So,
Yeah.
but I've removed myself from the the what it was the OpenJS Foundation. They have like a weekly meeting. I haven't really attended in a very long time because I've just been sort of bogged down on other stuff. But which is probably why this was off my radar. But with that being said, Ian, thanks so much for joining me and chatting about your maintenance of Create React App, your story of how you started doing this. Folks, if you have at all like got any sort of gems or wisdom, like please tweet this out to other folks to share about maintenance, open source, or even getting involved, just click that big old tweet button. It's very helpful because then people will show up to the next ones, and also they'll follow me and Ian as well, so we could be famous on Twitter. I'd also recommend anybody who's sitting in the chat, like follow folks who are also hanging out in the chat. These are all folks who want to be involved in open source or are already involved in open source. So definitely always click on profiles, like be sort of like stalkery and follow other people when you sit in these spaces as well. Cool. So Ian, thanks so much. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say thanks so much for having me. It was great. I am always happy to talk open source. So yeah, please, connect with me on Twitter or in the Create React app issues. Always happy to talk.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And everyone who's here, we'll see you on Twitter.